Okay, we're live. Hmm. Okay, hope you can hear me all right. So, the Yaakov Bakudei, double Parsha, it's quite long. Also, there's HaChodesh, we read the fourth, the last of the special maftirs that we read this time of year. All to do with the run-up, lead up to Pesach. So, HaChodesh, we read the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and it talks about the laws of Pesach that were given in Egypt already on the 1st of Nisan, the first Egypt, the first Exodus, first time round, 1st of Nisan, they got all the laws about that you have to take the lamb on the 10th of the month and tie it to their bedpost for 4 days, and then the shechted, and then the Seder night, and putting the blood on the doorposts and staying inside. All that was given on the 1st of Nisan, 2 weeks before the Exodus and the first Seder night. So to recall that, we go over that special maftir before Rosh Chodesh Nisan. The three previous ones we had were about the half shekel shkolim from Rosh Chodesh Adar. It used to be the custom to give; they would start collecting the half shekel, so that's why we read that then. The Shabbos before Adar, and then we read Zochar before Purim to remember Amalek. And then we read Para about the red heifer, because everyone had to be ritually clean and pure before they could bring a Pesach offering. And then we read about the laws of Pesach before Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Those are the special four. Also Chazak. We also finish the book of Exodus this week. So there's a lot going on, and it's also Shabbos of Arachim, of course. We said it's the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, so we bless the new month as well. So it's a lot going on, a lot of energy. Now, there are 53 parshas in the Torah, and occasionally we need to double up. Now, the doubling up is quite an interesting concept in itself. Like we said, there are 53 parshas, and in a standard lunar year, which is 354 days, so you divide it into weeks, you get about 50 and a half weeks in a lunar calendar, lunar year. But we've got 53 parshas, so straight away you have to double up. And that's besides the fact that many weeks in the year, Shabbos falls on a Yom Tov. And then we don't read the parsha for the week, we read the Yom Tov Leni. So it ends up you need to double up quite a few times. And then we have the phenomenon also that in Israel they'll be often a week ahead of us because they don't have second day Yom Tovs there. And if second day Yom Tov falls on Shabbos here, then we're going to read the Yom Tov laning and not the parsha of the week, and then we'll get behind Israel by week, etc. So it's interesting quirks of the calendar. So we have to double up. Now the question is, which parshas should be doubled up? It used to be in the good old days that they would read the Torah and it would take them, we complete it every year now on Simchas Torah, but it didn't always used to be like that. They used to read it over a series of 3 years, 3.5 years. It would take them to complete the Torah. And then at some point in Babylonia, where the main yeshivas were, the main centers of Torah study, they instituted the custom to finish the Torah once every year on Simchas Torah. And that custom eventually became more widespread. So we're talking about, let's say, year 300, the Common Era. So it became probably widespread. I did actually write this down a few hundred years later. Yeah, by year 600 already, this was widespread across. It became the adopted custom through the Jewish world to finish the Torah every year in Simchas Torah. So if that became the custom, then at some point the rabbis had to decide from going from 3.5 years to finishing the Torah, so now finishing it in a year, they need to seriously consider which parshas they're going to stick together. Some of them don't seem to really connect at all. I was thinking earlier, for example, Chukat and Balak. Chukas discusses Moshe and Miriam and Aaron. When Miriam and Aaron passed away, it talks about obviously Moshe hitting the rock. It talks about the war against Sichon and Og. Whereas King Balak hires Bilam to curse the Jews. And he ends up blessing them. Instead, the curse is turned into blessings, and Bilam's donkey, the talking donkey, where Shrek comes from. So those two parshas, they're often joined, Chukat and Balak, but they talk about completely different things. So how come they're connected? Why did they choose those to put together? Or Achrei Kedoshim, often those two parshas, Achrei Mos and Kedoshim, often go together as well. Achrei Mos talks about the Yom Kippur service and forbidden relations. And Kedoshim talks more about social ethics, mitzvahs regarding interpersonal relationships. So again, they're not really linked. Vayakal Pekudei, you could say a little bit more obvious the link. They're both discussing the Mishkan. But either way, the fact that the rabbis chose which parshas to stick together, it wasn't just a random thing like, we need to fit it quick. We need to get it into the year. How many weeks, how many parshas? Those two can go together. Those two can go together. Those two sometimes yes, sometimes not. There's more to it than just spreadsheets and just trying to fit everything in. And the parshas that they choose to put together, they have an intrinsic link that we have to then bring out. We have to find out, why were these two stuck together? Why did the rabbis in their wisdom decide to do this? Now, the truth is, this idea of finding the link, the link between two parshas that are stuck together, or you see that really they are one parsha, because when they're read together, Vayakal Pekudei this week, that is the parsha. It becomes one parsha. So we have to find the theme that flows through. But in a way, that's sort of in a microcosm. On the big scale, the entire universe, really the whole time, we're trying to figure out how we see God in every one thing. Just like in the two parshas, you're trying to find the themes that run through, or the message that runs through both, but it's really clearly one parsha now, when you understand the sort of the underlying message that links the two parshas. So too, we're going to look at what that is shortly. So too, the world in general, you can look at the room, you say, I can see a door, I can see a table. I can see that you've joined the shir. You all exist. We all exist. Yeah, I don't see God necessarily in all these things. It's the same idea that the Torah begins with which letter? To check you're all listening, and I haven't put you to sleep. Which letter does the Torah begin with?
Hey.
What did we go for? Hey.
Paid.
The first letter of the alphabet. You would think that would be a good place to start the Torah, with an aleph, but we begin with a bet. Yeah, we begin with a base. Bereshis, in the beginning. So Rashi says there, rashis, for two rashis, bases, aleph base, two beginnings did God create the universe. The Torah for the Torah and for the Jewish people. That is the commentary on the word Bereshis, amongst others. Other commentaries on that word. It's a loaded word, but it starts with base. Why not aleph? God is the aleph. God is the one, the only true existence. He creates everything. Nothing exists besides him. Start with the aleph. But God created the universe in such a way that it could look like it independently exists. Yeah. The world, as many people believe, independently exists. It just is. There's no need for a creator. We see the same idea when a child is born. At the beginning, a child is very selfish. It has to be to survive. If it's hungry, it cries. If it's dirty, it cries. If it needs something, it'll cry, it'll take. It doesn't like sharing once it gets a sibling. a younger sibling. Um, Even if it's a toy he or she has not played with for 4 or 5 years, as soon as she sees that the younger sibling now wants to play with that toy. Oh, that's my toy. Yeah, sharing is difficult for for children, and some people never grow up, and it's always difficult to share. Um, but eventually, the child grows up and it realizes it's not all about him or her, and there's lots of people out there in the world, and eventually learns to share. And it's if it great you raise a child properly, as we say in the expression, Torah chuppah ma'asim tovim. That we wish, when a baby is born, that it should grow up to a life of Torah, be led to the chuppah, and do lots of good deeds. So it's interesting. It's in that order. Torah, when you teach a child that there is a creator, there is one, that God exists and creates everything, and that He cares. He cares about what you do, and He gives you a blueprint of how to live. And there's more in the universe than just yourself. Then up there, when you have that understanding of there is a God and there's a morality and we have responsibilities and we're all sent down here on a mission, then you're able to go to chuppah, the next stage. You're able to actually become one with another, to share your life completely with someone else, to dedicate to someone else. And my tovim, that's more of a communal level, but you're able to think about other people, and even put yourself to one side and um, and worry about others more than yourself. But from a child to that stage, for a person to become altruistic and selfless and be able to put themselves and their own desires and have self-sacrifice on behalf of the Jewish people or for another person or for family, or, etc., then from a baby to that stage, that's a life process. It takes a long time to become a mensch because we're born selfish, for good reason. We have to be, but then through time, you have to get to that point where we're able to think about outside of ourselves. So why did I link that to creation? So again, the Aleph is God, but He chose to create the world in such a way where base, you could see it as independently existing. A person could also live their life as if no one else exists, and our job as Jewish people is to reveal the Aleph, to reveal that God is in everything and nothing is separate from Him. So going back to the table, how do you reveal that God is in the table? So generally by using it for mitzvahs, by having Shabbos guests, by learning on the table, by spending time with family around the table. All of a sudden the table becomes elevated. And you're able to use it for a mitzvah. Now, all of a sudden, the table becomes part of the divine plan. Okay, so Vayakhel Pekude, getting back to the parsha on this long tangent. Why were these two parshas chosen to be joined together? What is the underlying theme? Because that is the idea of this topic. That our job is to reveal that there is really one truth to everything. That God is in all creation. So what is the message of Yaakov Pekude? What is the single message? So Vayakhel generally talks about everyone contributing to the Mishkan. I should probably preface by saying Teruma Tetzaveh a few weeks ago, that was God commanding Moses, this is the home you're going to build for me, these are the vessels, this is how to make everything, this is the curtains, the courtyard, the beams, etc., the high priest's clothes, the Kohanim's clothes, the installation, rites and service before the temple becomes functional. God tells all that to Moses in Teruma and Tetzaveh, a bit of Kitissa. Then you have the golden calf in Kitissa, etc. But the Yaakov Pekude is basically now Moses telling the Jewish people everything that God told him in Teruma Tetzaveh, yeah? And not only Moses telling them, but the Jewish people fulfilling what they have been commanded to do. So that's why the Yaakov Pekude covers a lot of things we know already, but that's because God told Moses. The Jewish people still don't know anything real time when it all happened. They don't know yet about the Mishkan. But then the Yaakov Pekude, Moses tells all the Jewish people what he had previously been commanded by God. So that is Vayakel is how everyone heard about what they needed to give, and they all brought their contributions. It was very much the community acting as one. Everyone brought, and everyone brought. They were happy to bring, and they were inspired to bring, and they brought even more than they needed. Bukude, on the other hand, is more not so much about the collective unity, but about each individual offering. Everything was counted and recorded. Everything is listed separately, each component of the tabernacle. So the emphasis is very much on the individual detail, and counting everything up, all the accounts. It's for the accountants, this Parsha, Bukude. So Vayaka is about the collective, everyone bringing together, the community acting as one. But Bukude is more the individual value of every person. So you can see straight away that these Parshas don't really add up, because one is the collective Vayakel, and then Bukude we count every offering that was given by every individual. So this is sort of the big question. In a community, what's more important, the individual or the collective? So really, they go together. And this is why now you see why the rabbis decided to stick these parshas together. I'm not going to go through all the other double parshas to explain why how they fit together exactly. But when we get there, when it comes up in the future, we will. But every Jew is unique and distinct, and we all have our own personal part of the world or section in the world to refine and elevate, especially and included in that is our own physical bodies, which we sanctify through using our bodies for mitzvahs. But then there's a collective mission of the Jewish people, which is to make this world altogether collectively a home for God, which the Mishkan was. We built together, each individual brought their unique contribution that only they could give, and then collectively we make a home for God. And that was a blueprint for creation, what we did in the Mishkan. All the Jewish people, it's not a given, by the way, just because Moshe relates the commands to the Jewish people. The fact that we did it, and we did it par excellence, the Mishkan, it was perfect. As I mentioned earlier, we even brought more than we needed to. And this, when things are done right, the Torah it's good that the Torah goes into detail that yes, we did exactly as we were commanded, and we brought more, and it all went very well. Because before this, we obviously had the golden calf. In a way, this was the rectification for the sin of the golden calf, and the Jewish people now threw themselves into the project 100%. And Vayaka Moshe gathered all the people together. Very important. It's not just he happened to gather them, and that word kahal, congregation. So we sort of changed the noun into a verb. That he congregated together. He caused to assemble all the Jewish people. They were completely one at that time. They were ready for this project, ready to go. They were in the right frame of mind. They were completely unified for whatever Moshe was gathering them to do. Just like they were gathered completely before the Torah was given, before the Ten Commandments. They were in peak condition. Everyone was completely, no quarrels, no machlokas, no broigas. One of the rare times in Jewish history before the Ten Commandments. Then, of course, they messed up with the golden calf. So they needed to get back to that state of completely unified, ready to go. Moshe gives them the laws of Shabbos. He repeats, by the way, Shabbos you must observe, even when it comes to building the Mishkan, which then Moshe then goes on to tell them about that. But he starts off with Shabbos saying, remember, Shabbos is full stop. There's no exceptions, besides saving life, of course. But the Mishkan will only be able to continue not during Shabbos and also during the day. They don't think they built it at night time. So the Jewish people were completely bought in to the Mishkan. It went perfectly well. I mean, even on the day it was inaugurated, there was a problem with Nadav and Abihu ran into the Holy of Holies. They weren't meant to run in. Either they were drunk or they offered an offering they shouldn't have offered. Whatever the reason was, that disaster on day one of its functioning. But the actual building of it and everyone clubbing together, that was a highlight in Jewish history. That was up there. And that became the blueprint for creation, that every individual must bring their unique gifts, use their unique gifts that God has given us to use, um, whatever talents we have, whatever we're good at, use that to the betterment of our fellow Jew and our neighbors, and in how we do mitzvahs, everyone has their own kavanas. When you're doing a mitzvah, everyone, just like we all look differently, like it says in the Talmud, we all think differently. So everyone, the way that someone lights Shabbos candles will be different to the next Jewish woman, and that's why God needs every single person to do it. Because often people will say, why why do I need to do put tefillin on? There's millions of Jewish men putting tefillin on every day. Why do I need to light Shabbos candles, etc., etc., whatever the mitzvah might be? Why do I need to X, Y, Z? The rabbi will do it for me, or the rabbi will pray for me, or whatever it is. The fact that person exists means that God needs their unique contribution. So that's more of the pekudei. Each individual contribution was counted and reckoned with, and then tallied up. But Vayakel is eventually, if everyone does that, if everyone brings their piece, their donation, then it will become a complete home. Okay, so now you understand. Vayakel Pekudei on the surface, Vayakel is about the community, Pekudei is about the individual offering.
Interesting.
What's that, Lindsay? Sorry, I was heard some
Sorry,
heckling.
No, it wasn't heckling.
Oh, go on.
I was just looking for the charging cable for my iPad. Please continue.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, so on the surface, the parshes look very different, but actually you see the theme that runs between the two, that in order for a community to build anything, it means that every individual must bring their own unique offering that no one else can bring. It's also very empowering because that way every individual is needed. There's no one's redundant, nothing's superfluous, which is a very strong message. And on that, now I understand why this was also chosen to be chazak. I mean, there's already big gaps between books in the Torah. But you understand why the Shemos, Exodus finishes on this double parsha, because it's very empowering to know that the community can't do its job, can't fulfill. God's presence won't rest on the Mishkan, on the tabernacle. God's presence won't rest in this world properly, which is the idea of Mashiach, until we have every Jew bringing their shekel, their piece of wool, their linen. So translate that into mitzvahs, their tefillin, their Shabbos candle, their Torah learning, their prayers, their mezuzah. So that's why it's also chosen to be chazak. Again, when we finish the next book of the Torah, I'll have to remind myself to remind us why the parsha finishes on that parsha or that pasuk in particular. Okay. Now, because we talked about Shabbos not overriding the Mishkan's construction. Construction must stop for Shabbos. We also learn what malacha means, what work actually means with regards to Shabbos. So anything that they would have done in the building of the Mishkan, that you can't do on Shabbos. And that's why the laws of Shabbos are given. One of the reasons the laws of Shabbos are given just before the Jewish people actually start building and donating and building the Mishkan. And as we know, there are 39 malachas, labors that took place in the construction of the Mishkan. And there's a long list, 39, like I said, but we're not going to go through all of them now. But for example, the panels, the beams, they had numbers on. So they knew which panel went next, which one went with which, because again, the Mishkan was often assembled and disassembled many times throughout their journeys. So to make things, to speed things along, they would write where all the planks would go with which plank, and they wouldn't have to, organized. So that would be writing, for example. You'd have to write on the plank the number. Okay, so that's one of the 39. Cooking. So they would often have to cook to create the dyes, different herbs to create the dyes for the curtains, or the priestly garments. Yeah, remember they needed to make blue, purple, red. It's hard work making
The soup.
making all this.
You're making a soup.
Making a suit or soup? Suits, yeah. Basically, yeah, they're making a nice fancy garments for the high priest. Making soup as it's to eat. Yeah, so now because they cooked the dyes, they boiled the dyes, the herbs to make the dyes, so we can't. That became one of the malachas, one of the labors we don't do on Shabbos. Sewing the curtains, weaving the curtains together. If there's a rip, they'd have to, yeah. Or they had to work with the metals, gold, silver, copper. So in order to work with them, they'd have to smelt them down, smold them down. Not sure what the technical term is, smelting. So again, they would do that to form the vessels of the Mishkan. The menorah was made out of one slab of gold, so they had to manipulate that. You have to heat it up. So again, making a fire. So that became they needed to do that to build the Mishkan. So that's one of the things we don't do on Shabbos, etc., etc. And there are 39 in total. So Shabbos is complicated. Let's put it that way. When it comes to questions, as a rabbi, when I get questions about, is this kosher? Or I mix this pot with this pan, or my non-Jewish cleaner cooked spinach in my microwave, etc., etc., whatever it might be, bought from a shop. So it often turns out that with kashrus, there's a lot more ways to be lenient, or a lot more things you can rely on to then say something is still kosher. But with Shabbos, generally, questions on Shabbos, normally there's going to be a problem. There's normally more red tape with Shabbos. Less things that you can rely on. It needs to normally, for Shabbos to be overridden, or for us to relax the laws of Shabbos, you normally need life-threatening, we know, or someone to be ill, and even then, it's not necessarily you can do everything. Depends how ill they are. If someone's their lights go out during a Shabbos meal, Friday night, it's not so straightforward that you can just ask a non-Jew, can you just turn the lights on? There's ways to go about it. Whereas with kashrus, normally if there was soap involved, it was the whole water hot enough. Sometimes the water's not hot enough to make a problem, etc. So there's ways of trying to be more lenient with. Well, there are ways you can be more lenient with kashrus, but Shabbos is very strict. And not only is it strict, but there's 39 different malachas that you need to be careful of. Just to give one example, so this past Shabbos, we had chicken soup, yeah, canadles, Friday night, that was it. Right, so one of the children didn't want their canadle. So they took it out of the bowl. I said, you can't do that because on Shabbos, you're not allowed to select sifting. They would sift and select from different objects that they needed to build, when they were building the temple. I'll actually have to look up also the soiles and the chaff. When you're for example, wheat, when you want to get rid of the wheat and you leave the kernels behind, the chaff, get rid of the chaff and leave the kernels. Yeah, selecting, sifting, winnowing, all that type of stuff. So they didn't want the canadle. You're not allowed to take out what you don't want. But I said you could give the canadle to me because now you want the canadle to give to your father. Yeah. So it becomes complicated. If you don't want tomatoes in your vegetable salad, you're not meant to take out the tomatoes. You're not allowed to take the bad from the good. But for someone else, they do want the tomatoes, then it's fine. Yeah. So a lot will depend on the individual. So you can see how it could get complicated. But ultimately, not I'm making Shabbos sound like a minefield of things you can and can't do. Ultimately, all these things are there so you're mindful of Shabbos, not to work, not to do anything that's considered work. I mean, we think, running around and moving furniture and work is what we think of during the week, but also work in a way is being able to sort of detach from your regular hustle and bustle, and that expresses itself through things like not writing, not selecting, not carrying when there's no aaron, no transactions, not even touching money or things that could be used for work and transactions. Yeah, it's meant to be a complete detach. And sometimes, because we're not always in the right sort of frame of mind, we come in from the week and we bring all the week sort of stress with us into Shabbos. So then it's hard to actually slow down properly. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. The idea generally of all the laws of Shabbos we learn from what malachas were done in the Mishkan. Okay, just to finish up. Now, since we don't have a temple nowadays, but really every Jewish home is it's really like a small temple, small Mishkan, a Mikdash Ma'at, a small sanctuary, every Jewish home. And of course, every shul, and the shuls are designed very much with the temple in mind. Like we have the bells on the Sefer Torah to remind us of the bells on the high priest. We have the ark with the Torah inside, just like the ark had the Ten Commandments inside, and according to one opinion, also had the Sefer Torah inside. The women's gallery and the men's gallery is separate. In the temple, the women's gallery was actually upstairs. They built like an upstairs women's gallery on over Sukkot, for example. But also in our own homes, we make our homes into like a sanctuary. We have tzedakah boxes, Jewish books. We wash our hands, etc. We have washing cups. We leave salt. There's a thing of leaving salt on the table. So when you've washed your hands before you have a meal, before you make hamotzi, even when you're sitting there silently, it's considered you've done a mitzvah by having salt on the table, because salt are used with the sacrifices, and your table then becomes like the altar. Yeah, so it's good to know. Leave a bit of salt out, and get some nice salt shakers. We've actually lost ours. And one of the kids has confiscated it. So ultimately, every one of us in our own home is making, this is the same idea, this individual contribution. Each home becomes a small base of mikdash, small sanctuary, and altogether, when enough of us do this, when everyone steps forward to bring their donation, their offering, through their life, through their home, through their section of the world that God has given them, then we build a Mishkan for Hashem, a dwelling place for God, which is, like we mentioned earlier, that is eventually the cumulative effort of thousands of years of Jews doing Torah mitzvahs. Keeping Torah mitzvahs will cause God to rest, His presence down here, which happened twice already. The first temple, the second temple, God came also on Mount Sinai, and also the beginning of creation, God's presence was down here, and we're working for the last push to make it happen again, speedily in our days. Okay, thank you for joining.
Thank you very much.
And it's been recorded, so if you feel we can share it online. Okay, good night, everyone.